Last year, millions of vacation days went completely unused across the corporate world. I mean, millions.
Yeah, it's a staggering number, honestly.
Right. And we are not talking about people who just, love their jobs so much they couldn't bear to leave their desks.
Oh, definitely not.
No, we are talking about people who were desperately burned out, just staring blankly at their calendars, whose brains felt like they were running on dial-up internet.
Which is a terrible feeling.
It is.
Yeah.
So why leave those days on the table? Because for a massive chunk of the workforce, the actual act of drafting the email to ask for the time off.
Just typing it out.
Exactly. Sweating over the punctuation, agonizing over whether a period is too aggressive or, an exclamation point is too eager. It was so psychologically taxing that they literally chose burnout over a 5-minute conversation with their boss.
It is a phenomenal paradox, isn't it? I mean, the modern workplace offers these benefits ostensibly for our well-being.
Right.
But then it surrounds the utilization of those benefits with this, invisible electric fence of social anxiety.
That's a great way to put it.
Because asking for time off, asserting that boundary, it consistently ranks as one of the most stressful everyday interactions people navigate. It triggers deep-seated anxieties about, job security, perceived dedication, and obviously power dynamics.
Exactly. And that is exactly what we are tackling today. Because whether you are navigating a brand new corporate environment, working internationally, or you are just someone who chronically overthinks every single communication like I do.
We all do it.
We really do. But asking for a day off does not have to be a psychological hurdle. So our mission for this deep dive is to decode the strategic language, the unwritten power dynamics, and the really fascinating cultural nuances behind requesting time off.
Yeah, moving past just basic communication to look at actual corporate strategy.
Precisely. We are going to analyze the essential phrases, break down the emotional intelligence of when to use them, and explore how the very concept of a day off morphs depending on where your desk is located geographically.
The goal here is to move from a place of uncertainty to a place of strategy. Because, the words you choose don't just convey a schedule change, they actually act as a negotiation tactic.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, they signal your understanding of corporate etiquette, and they dictate exactly how your request is perceived by management.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we get into the tactical phrasing, like the actual words we type out, we need to understand the architecture of what we are actually asking for.
Right, the foundations.
Yeah, because you can't just walk up to your manager and declare, I wish to cease producing labor for a brief window.
I mean, you could, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not great for career growth.
Yeah.
The corporate structure demands categorization. There is an entire taxonomy of time off.
Precisely. Human resources departments operate on distinct categories. They need to classify your absence in order to manage the liability, the payroll, and obviously the workflow. So based on the documentation, we are looking at 4 primary structural buckets. First, we have sick leave. This is your reactive bucket, right? It is invoked specifically when illness strikes abruptly.
Okay, sick leave. Got it.
Then we have annual leave or vacation leave, depending on where you work.
Yeah.
This is the proactive standard holiday time you accrue.
Right, the bucket that actually involves a beach or like a decent book.
The restorative bucket, yes. Then the structure gets slightly more nuanced. We have personal leave, which covers, individual reasons, administrative life duties, or specific life events.
Like moving apartments or something.
Exactly. And finally, family leave, which is dedicated to specific familial obligations, like parental leave for a new baby or caring for a dependent.
It honestly reminds me of the underlying logic of a legal contract.
Oh, it very much is.
Like, you cannot just ask for abscess. You have to invoke the specific clause of your employment agreement. And the materials point out that this categorization is always the crucial first step.
Yeah, you can't skip it.
Right. You have to locate the infamous leave request form or, the digital HR portal where you input your name, the dates, and the specific reason code. I've always thought of it as a slightly infantilizing adult permission slip.
That is a very common psychological reaction to the process, for sure. But if we look at it analytically, the reason this permission slip architecture exists is because defining the type of leave dictates the power dynamic.
How so?
Well, it dictates a level of formality required for the subsequent conversation. It sets the exact parameters of the negotiation.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. If you are invoking annual leave for a 2-week international trip, that requires a completely different approach, a different timeline, and frankly, a different level of deference than invoking personal leave for, a 2-hour dental appointment.
Okay, so if the HR category is the underlying permission slip, the actual words we use to initiate the conversation act as the negotiation tactic. Let's look at how the power dynamics shift depending on the phrases we deploy. Because looking at the spectrum of formality, there is a massive difference between asking a question and making a statement.
What's fascinating here is how the grammatical structure changes the psychological weight of the message. The spectrum really ranges from what we can categorize as the casual, direct approach to the formal request.
Right, so on the casual side, the language is stripped down. It's essentially a closed-ended question. The phrases are things like, can I take Friday off? Or can I take next Monday off?
Or can I take 2 days off next week?
Yeah, it is quick. It is frictionless.
And that casual interrogative approach, asking, can I, is highly effective for a low-stakes environment, like a quick chat or an instant message on a team channel.
Because it's not a huge deal.
Right. It implies a minor disruption. You are technically giving away a bit of power by asking for permission, but because the request is small, it's viewed as polite deference. However, as the length of the absence grows, or if you operate in a more rigid corporate culture, asking a simple "can I" suddenly feels inappropriate. You have to slide up the spectrum to the formal request.
And this is where the language shifts from a question to a declaration. You start using phrases like, I'd like to request time off for next week, or I'd like to take some annual leave.
Exactly. Notice the subtle assertion of boundaries there. You are moving away from the submissive "can I" to a declarative statement of intent. But, it is wrapped in the velvet glove of formal politeness.
I'd like to request.
Yes. This is the optimal language for a formal email or a long-term planning meeting. It signals to your manager that you respect the structural protocol of the office while firmly asserting your right to the accrued time.
But let me push back on something here, because this is the exact trap I fall into, and I know I'm not alone.
Okay, what is it?
It's the justification phase, the reason. When you are using that formal language, I'd like to request time off, there's this overwhelming psychological urge to justify your existence.
Oh, the over-explaining.
Yes. Like, do I need to explain my entire life story? Am I supposed to write, I'd like to request time off because my sister is getting married in Ohio and the commercial flights are a disaster right now, so I need a buffer day just in case there's a layover issue?
That is a classic symptom of worker guilt.
Really?
Yeah, it's the internalized feeling that we must rigorously defend our right to not be productive. But from a strategic standpoint, over-explaining actually dilutes your power and professionalism. Short, clear, almost clinical reasons are the gold standard.
Wait, but if I just say something vague to a micromanaging boss, aren't they going to assume the worst?
Like what?
Well, if I say, I have an appointment, won't they assume I'm secretly interviewing for a job at a competitor? Does vagueness actually backfire in a low-trust work environment?
It's a fair concern, definitely. But the strategy of brevity is really about boundary enforcement. When you over-explain your sister's wedding logistics, you are subconsciously inviting your manager to evaluate the validity of your reason.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, you are opening a negotiation where there shouldn't be one. The recommended phrases are incredibly concise for a reason. I have a doctor's appointment, I have a family event, I'm going on a trip.
Just keeping it high level.
Exactly. It provides the necessary logistical context without surrendering your right to privacy.
Okay, I see the logic. Like, I have a family event is almost beautifully opaque.
Yeah.
It is polite, it checks the HR box, but it is a closed door.
Perfectly said.
It could be a golden anniversary, or it could be bailing your cousin out of the chaotic situation. It establishes the boundary without inviting interrogation.
Precisely.
But all of this strategy, the careful weighing of casual versus formal, the perfectly opaque reasoning, it assumes you have the luxury of planning ahead.
Which is not always the case.
Right. What happens when the underlying premise is chaos? When you wake up at 6 a.m., your throat is on fire and the ceiling is spinning.
The strategy shifts entirely. We leave the realm of the planned negotiation and enter the high-stakes territory of the unplanned absence. Navigating sick leave requires a fundamentally different linguistic toolkit.
Because it's sudden.
Yes, and primarily because the power dynamics are suddenly inverted.
Because when you are sick, you are inherently vulnerable. You are at a physical disadvantage, and the absolute last thing you want to do is engage in a complex, multi-paragraph tap dance about your symptoms with your supervisor.
Nobody wants to write that email.
Exactly. You want the communication to act as a shield, short, immediate, and completely frictionless.
Precisely. And the procedural protocol reflects this urgency. If you wake up incapacitated, the standard expectation is immediate notification, usually a direct text or an email to your immediate supervisor before the workday officially begins.
Right.
The priority shifts from polite negotiation to damage control and workflow management for the team left behind.
Which is why having these prepackaged standardized phrases is so critical. You don't have to invent the wheel while you have a fever. You just deploy the phrase.
The phrases act as universal corporate shorthand. I'm not feeling well today. I'm feeling sick today. Or the direct invocation of the HR category, can I take a sick day?
They're just so simple.
They are unambiguous, and they immediately trigger the sick leave protocol we discussed earlier.
It's a linguistic shield because I'm not feeling well today is universally respected, at least in theory. You don't have to performatively cough into the phone.
Thank goodness.
Right. You don't have to type out, I have a fever of 102 and a gastrointestinal issue. Just, I'm not feeling well. It aggressively protects your medical privacy while perfectly fulfilling your professional obligation to inform your team.
It does. However, as we look at the broader mechanics of workplace culture, we discover that the effectiveness of these phrases and, well, the level of privacy they actually afford you is not a universal constant.
It changes.
It is deeply, fundamentally geographical.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because up until now, we've been analyzing the underlying psychology of these rules as if they apply everywhere. But understanding how these rules shatter and reform across borders is critical. Especially for anyone listening who works in a multinational company or collaborates with global teams. The exact same phrase can trigger a completely different HR reaction depending on the country.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the administrative reaction to the phrase, I'm not feeling well, tells us an enormous amount about a culture's baseline level of trust, its legal frameworks, and its collective priorities.
So what does the data show?
The data we are looking at provides a stark contrast between work cultures, specifically analyzing the divergent approaches of China versus the West.
Let's get into those mechanisms, because on the surface, the differences are striking. Starting with China, the corporate culture generally features highly flexible short-term time-off policies. The barrier to entry for asking for a day off is culturally lower.
And the most fascinating metric of that flexibility is the documentation requirement. In China, taking a sick day for a minor illness often does not require a doctor's note.
Which is huge.
It represents a profound difference in the baseline level of trust between employer and employee. The culture generally accepts the employee's self-assessment of their own minor health issues without requiring third-party verification.
That is a massive paradigm shift. You don't have to drag your exhausted body to a crowded clinic just to secure a piece of paper proving to your boss that you have a common cold.
Right.
And that flexibility extends beyond illness, too. The research shows that in China, taking time off for family events, specifically communal obligations like weddings or funerals, is heavily normalized and easily accommodated by management.
But the trade-off is how macro-level rest is structured. While short-term flexibility is high, long-term vacations in China often revolve around Golden Week.
Right, the national holiday.
Yes, this is a concentrated national period of holiday where massive portions of the population take their extended trips simultaneously. It is a highly synchronized collective break.
Which is the exact inverse of what we see in the West. It is so ironic, isn't it? Western corporate culture preaches hyper-individualism, yet the approach to time off is heavily formalized and requires constant individual negotiation and verification.
It is a culture built on verifiable documentation and liability management. In the West, time off usually needs to be booked and approved well in advance.
You can't just drop it on them.
No, you are not relying on a synchronized national shutdown. Instead, you are taking 1 to 2 weeks, perhaps to travel abroad or go to the mountains, and this absence has to be carefully negotiated to ensure the corporate machine doesn't stop running while you are gone.
And the burden of proof is entirely on the worker. We were just talking about China's high-trust approach to minor illness. In the West, if you are out sick for more than 1 or 2 consecutive days, a doctor's note isn't just requested. It is a hard HR requirement.
You have to prove it.
Yeah, you have to provide external medical validation to justify your absence.
It is a low-trust administrative environment. The psychology leans heavily on a paper trail. We also see this cultural need for specific justification in the language used for personal leave in the West.
How does that change the language?
Well, while time off for family events is obviously common, you cannot rely on the beautifully vague, I have a family event, if it requires a longer absence.
Right. If it's a major life milestone, the vagueness suddenly works against you. You have to label the gravity of the event to earn the time. I
Exactly.
have to use specific phrases like, I'm attending a family wedding, or, on the somber side, there's a funeral I need to attend.
Yeah.
You're essentially trading your personal privacy for HR approval.
Because in a documentation-heavy culture, the perceived weight of the reason helps lubricate the approval process. The language must mirror the cultural expectation of transparent justification.
It is wild when you think about it. The exact same biological reality, I have a fever, is processed through two entirely different cultural machines depending on your time zone.
It really is.
One system says, rest up. We trust your assessment. See you tomorrow. The other system says, we acknowledge your claim of illness. Please provide legally binding documentation from a licensed medical professional by 9 a.m. Wednesday.
Yeah, quite the contrast.
Navigating that friction gracefully is the absolute hallmark of emotional intelligence in the modern global economy.
Undoubtedly.
Okay, so let's say you've run the gauntlet, you categorize your leave correctly, you chose the exact right level of formality to negotiate the time, you perfectly navigated the cultural expectations and documentation requirements of your specific office.
You did everything right.
And you actually did it. You took the time off, you laid on a beach, or you recovered from your flu in bed, you are refreshed. You walk back through the office doors, or you log back into the server, you did it. The transaction is complete, right?
Not quite. And this is where a surprising number of professionals damage their own internal reputation. The interaction isn't actually complete until you actively close the loop.
The art of the return. So what does this all mean? Why on earth do we need to bring up our absence when we're already back to work and trying to catch up on 500 unread emails?
Because taking time off, regardless of how entitled you are to those days, is essentially a withdrawal from your professional relationship bank account.
A withdrawal. Okay.
Yeah, your absence created friction. Your manager or your team had to absorb your workload, manage the schedule, or delay projects. The final step, the return, is about depositing goodwill back into that account.
It's about neutralizing the friction. And again, there are highly specific phrases designed to do exactly that.
Right.
If you are operating in a strict formal environment, you go with, I'm back, thank you for approving my leave. But if you are in a more relaxed culture, you can use the warmer, more collaborative version. Thanks for letting me take time off.
Either phrase accomplishes the exact same psychological goal. It acknowledges the effort it took to accommodate you. It officially transitions your status from absent back to active and engaged. And most importantly, it signals professional respect.
I love the relationship bank account analogy. It's such a tiny investment. It takes maybe 3 seconds of speaking or typing to say, thanks for letting me take time off.
Barely any effort at all.
But it completely prevents you from seeming entitled. Even if you mathematically earned those vacation days, walking back in and acting like your absence has zero impact on your colleagues is just bad emotional intelligence.
Exactly. It is a social lubricant. Acknowledging their effort today is precisely what makes your manager infinitely more likely to approve your next request without hesitation. You are building a track record of reliability and mutual respect.
Which, let's be honest, you are going to need, because we are all going to need another break. The modern workplace is an endurance sport.
It really is.
So let's bring it all together for everyone listening. Asking for time off does not have to be a source of dread. It is simply a strategic process. First, understand your corporate architecture. Know whether you are invoking sick, annual personal, or family leave so you set the right parameters.
Very important.
Second, match your negotiation tactic to the situation. Use the casual, can I take, for low-stakes requests, and the declarative, I'd like to request, to firmly assert your boundaries for larger absences.
And remember the power of brevity. Resist the urge triggered by worker guilt to over-explain your life. I have a doctor's appointment is a complete sentence and a perfect boundary.
Absolutely. Understand the cultural machinery of your specific environment. Know if you operate in a high-trust, flexible culture or a low-trust, documentation-heavy culture, and adjust your privacy expectations accordingly. And finally, always make that deposit back into the relationship bank account by saying thank you when you return.
The language we use to step away from the machinery of work is constantly adapting to the way that machinery evolves, and this raises an important question.
What's that?
Well, as remote work, globalized teams, and asynchronous communication increasingly blur the physical and temporal lines between home and the office, how might the very concept of taking a day off evolve in the next decade?
That's a good point.
If our offices live in our pockets, and we are technically reachable 24 hours a day, will the language of asking for leave have to become fundamentally more aggressive? Will we reach a point where we have to stop politely asking and start firmly declaring our time off just to achieve genuine unplugged rest?
Wow. That is a heavy, very real thought. The idea that the polite question, can I take Friday off, might eventually have to morph into the rigid declaration, I am severing my connection to the servers on Friday.
It might happen.
It's a testament to how hard we have to fight for our own downtime. Something for all of us to mull over the next time we are staring down a blinking cursor, overthinking that email to our boss. Protect your boundaries, understand your leverage, and take your time off, people. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.